seeking another shooter, at least a person of interest, to question about
several, yeah,
some kind of involvement in this.
We have a follow-up today, and I think what Jay Dyer brought to the show for that particular occasion, which was pretty accidentally but well-timed, was the esoteric symbolism with the pyramids and all the other stuff that's kind of tied it, and the name being Paddock, and all these people are like trapped in a cage, like animals, to be shot. You know, it's like all these little weird side consistencies and symbolism that would be, I don't know. I don't know if I would naturally pick up on any of that.
Yeah, he brought that to it, and since that the Vegas shooting, there's been various theories about what happened. But Greg of the Higher Side Chats had on a person whose name I don't remember right now, but he had a take on the shooting, the Vegas shooting, happened on the same day that NASA was founded, or the birth of NASA, and there's some kind of numerology and synchronicity with that. And then, days later, that object, I guess an extrasolar object, moved into our solar system, and it was some kind of weird synchronicity, numerological kind of Illuminati kind of ritual. But I don't know enough about it. I mean, I don't have the time to research all this stuff. I need to be able to bring people on the show that can tell us what the fuck is going on, because I just don't have the goddamn time to invest in in magic and psionics and out-of-body experiences. I don't have the time. I'm researching Bigfoots and UFOs.
Quit your job and just rely on the Patreon and live on the streets.
Oh, live on the Patreon, the sweet, sweet Patreon money?
Donate to the show, everybody. We try to put together some decent content, but I suppose the numbers speak for themselves.
Boner. Well, thank you for everyone who does donate.
You sons of bitches!
Yes, we do have it our Patreon page. You can find all this at ourbigdumbmouth.com or obdmpod.com.
Yeah, it's all happening. And we know that we might as well just. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do with Jay Dyer. We didn't set up some sort of hey, we want to bring you on to talk about this. I think it's gonna be a hang.
Yeah, I think it could be a good thing to hang, just to kind of bullshit, because with all the crazy shit that's going on, I'm sure he's got an interesting take on all of it. But then there have been many Vegas story change-ups, and maybe he's got. We might as well get what he's thinking about that. I just saw a story today, or is it yesterday or something, where the prostitute lover said he was some kind of some government experiment or some crazy thing.
And I heard a rumor that Jay Dyer is going to physically fight Jordan Peterson.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I ask him about Jordan Peterson, because I think the Wolves are out for Jordan Peterson right now.
They are, and Jay Dyer put out a criticism video about an hour in length, and I think them are fighting words, so I think they're going to square off in a cage like a blood sport with Van Damme. We'll see what happens. But
there's this quote. This is from, I don't know how reliable Radar Online is.
I think they're good. I trust them with my life.
I think that's a little extreme. They have this quote in this end of this story that says there's messages where Steven is telling her he's a government experiment, and that they are listening to everything he says and does, and they can hack into his brain and take over.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into that with Jay, because we're going to have to dig into that big time. We're going to try to add people to this call, and that person hopefully will be Jay Dyer. And I think Jay might be there. He might be connecting.
Aha.
Hi, Jay.
Wow, crystal clear. I can see your pores.
Ah,
that's no good.
Well, Can I get the blackheads out.
I might not be on screen. My name's Mike, but Joe down there will be, and my video is streaming to the YouTube. So thank you for coming on with us, Jay. Really appreciate your time and energy to get up here and do this.
I remember you, Mike. Yeah, I had a lot of fun on the last podcast, and I really like comedic. There's a lot more freedom, I think, than when you have to go on a thing where you have to talk about all this, geopolitical dark shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't mind talking about the dark stuff as long as we're able to have fun with it and people don't take it personal when we joke about morbid, very dark stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying that comedic podcasts are more fun than serious podcasts. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's all too serious to really think about. Like, in fact, Eric was telling me today that the more he learns about this stuff, that's my husband. But the more he learns about this stuff, he can feel himself getting depressed. And I know that for me, when I started looking into all this stuff, and I was like, wait, so the 9/11 thing kind of connects to the JFK thing, and all these numbers line up, and then it starts to hurt your brain if you get your head around it, and you get depressed, you get a little stressed, and you're like, holy crap, man! All these years I've been telling people they're conspiracy theorists, and now it looks like I was the guy being a douche.
Well, yeah. I mean, you may have always been a douche, but I mean, now at least you're being proven right in some way. I hope so. Well, Jay, you've I don't know how much you want to dwell on your Jordan Peterson video that you put up, but Jordan Peterson is hot. He's a very controversial figure.
He is so. Oh my gosh,
he's a sexy guy. I think. I think he earns from Patreon over $300,000 a year from his Patreon for
$8 billion a month. He gets $8 billion a month from his Patreon.
Oh my Lord, that's outrageous.
Trump ain't even worth that much.
No, I'm fine. So, we can talk about whatever. I don't give a shit.
Just very, very, very quickly about when it comes to Jordan Peterson. Are you being attacked by his followers on your Twitter or on social media at all? Death threats?
I have had probably in the vein of a couple hundred responses, comments, messages, and emails from Jordan Peterson fanboy cult members. And I don't hate Jordan Peterson. I'm just trying, and I'm not just trying to get clicks. After about 200 requests to cover Jordan Peterson, I decided I would do it. So that's all it is. And then I didn't expect to stir up a hornet's nest, but that's cool. I can take it. In fact, there's going to be two, hopefully, big debates. I should be debating tomorrow night one of the biggest YouTubers on a big stream tomorrow night. So I'm stirring up hornet's nest, and I'm sure that I'm going to get thousands of crazy nerds after me.
Can you just run us real quick through your general summary of the Jordan Peterson sensation that's happening right now?
Are we online now, live now, or
we are absolutely live right now. We're able to take calls. You want Joe? Your video has dropped out.
Did my video drop out?
Your video has dropped out. I'm not sure if that's my connection or yours, but we can take calls at any point in time. But I want to give Jay a little time here to talk before we take any calls from our very rude listeners.
Yeah.
So basically, the criticism was just I've not had a whole lot of time to listen to Jordan Peterson over the last couple of years. I've heard maybe 3 or 4 lectures and maybe 3 or 4 interviews. So I feel like I have a decent grasp of where he's coming from. And really, my criticism is just coming from a philosophical standpoint. Most of the time in my videos, I'm trying to promote the specific worldview that I come from. And so I defend that worldview. It does include things like metaphysics and theology. And so there's some overlap, but I hear a lot of classical liberalism, and I take issue with that. It's not a new criticism that I'm making. I've criticized classical liberalism for years now. Most of the Tim Kelly interviews I've done, we've done probably 10 or 15 interviews that are 3-4 hours at times. We criticize classical liberalism there. So that was the bone of my contention in terms of Jordan Peterson. Obviously, he's, megatons magnitude more popular than I am. So it's not that big of a deal. But it is surprising that anytime you criticize somebody of that stature, you will get, 2, 3, 500 people machine gunning you. And none of those people understood the criticism. It took a whole week since I posted that video for a lot of these people to go through these phases where the first phase is oh, you're absolutely wrong. You're lying. And then it's oh, okay, well, maybe you're not lying. I see your point, but that was just because of a state law. And then it's okay, so maybe it's not just about him disagree with the state law. He did contradict himself, but he's just being considerate. And then the final stage was, oh, okay, so he did contradict himself, but you're just wanting clicks. So it's like these phases of the cult. The fanboys have gone through these phases of admitting that I made a good point, and that's all I was really going for.
I think that a lot. I think at least when it comes to online discussions, criticism is good. You don't got to defend everything to the fucking death.
And everybody who is online gets a zillion freaking criticisms. I don't know why that would even be a big deal. I mean, I know you guys do a podcast. I'm sure you get a shit ton of, criticisms in the comments. Everybody gets it.
It's all conflicting too.
People hate us. Yeah.
I don't know who I am anymore. But so you mentioned like the cult, and I think what's interesting is ever since this Channel 4 interview he's done, I feel like all the knives are out from most of the mainstream sources. They're putting out these articles now calling him a cult leader, literally calling him a cult leader for the alt-right and all this other stuff. Like, what do you make of this? Is this like controlled opposition type stuff going on? Does Jordan Peterson represent that? Or is he just a threat to the system in the same way Milo was, where they had to dig out all this pedophilia stuff?
I think that to be an alt media superstar, megastar, you have to be some kind of classical liberal and my criticism of Jordan Peterson eventually got heated just because so many of the fanboys were commenting on the YouTube video and on and on and on. But I said that I think he's a little overblown. I mean, again, in the little niches of debates that he does really good. But let's not go crazy here. Let's be honest. I think we're just dealing with kind of like a self-help dude. Basically, I said he's like Tony Robbins meets Milo in the body of a young Vincent Price. That's literally what he looks like. He looks like a young Vincent Price, like Vincent Price giving self-help, which is fine. That's cool. But, he's not a guru. And I'm not a guru. I'm not trying to be a guru.
Let's start a rumor here. Like Jordan Peterson, he's pretty clean cut. Like he's almost like he's like anti-Bill Nye in some way.
Okay, yeah.
This a very similar build, a similar demeanor, and almost like facial construction. But Jordan Peterson, he's probably got to have some weird thing about him that is just so off the wall, like he's in like to incest role play or something like that. I don't know, but there's got to be something there.
Mr. Rogers was people said he was a sniper or something with the most kills. Like that could be a fun room.
I like that. Yes.
He doesn't come off to me as having sniper skills, but that would be funny. That would be hilarious if he was like a total closet, psychopath, and he's like the dude in 50 Shades of Grey. He's like smacking women with bondage gear at night, but then he comes on. And I don't know, but
yeah, I like that.
Fine with me.
We need to develop that storyline for him and write some Jordan Peterson fan fiction and release that online.
Well, this is a good way to get some traction. I'll tell you what, if you title your thing something to do with Jordan Peterson, get ready because you're going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not bitching, but man, they will come. It's like that's why I was saying, hey, this is kind of like a cult. Like I get criticism all the time, but I don't have like a bunch of groupies that attack people, which I wasn't attacked. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the guy. I like listening to his point of view.
Yeah, he's fun to listen to.
Yeah, I'm not trained as a philosopher or anything like that. So I mean, when it comes to these kind of conversations, I like hearing different points of view. And I like how he gets attacked in interviews, and he kind of works his way and gets some people sometimes. So it's fun.
No, it's fun to watch that, and that's great. But that's all the low hanging fruit, as they say. Like he's never gonna. I don't think he will ever debate anybody with like a real philosophical grounding. I don't think any of the alt media stars will do that because why would they? What do they stand to gain from debating? And somebody who's like a serious, philosophy student.
Yeah, I don't know. It probably won't happen. Not anytime soon. I'm gonna drag you on our journey, Jay, and I'm gonna play you and everyone some Alex Jones clips right now. So this is the part of the show where I play. I only have one or two Alex Jones clips, and we'll comment on them. Like he said this the other day. Die Hitler! And he was talking about George Soros when he said "Die Hitler."
Of course.
Yeah, makes sense. And this one is called this rant. It's about a minute long. It is called the DC Nuke Rant. Alex Jones coming at you. Here we go.
They're on TV saying, Trump, we're coming for you. We're going to kill you. To make it look like everything was peachy keen for all their operatives and their deep state people. Hold the line. Stay here. You're safe. They're like, in the text messages, none of this is real. There's no Russian collusion. This is dangerous. It's in the text messages. Continue on. McCabe, continue. Press the attack. This is illegal. Do it. You're in this deep enough. Yes, sir. I'll do it. And then they all ran to Congress and ran to the president under his wings. Come on, chickens. Come on, little chickies. Right under the wings. But I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch. But man, because you know when Darth Vader's got Luke Skywalker and he says, I have you now, he doesn't. So I'd be watching all sixes right now for what they're going to pull, because they want to set a nuke off in D.C. They want to pull some kind of hanky-panky. This is the time they're going to do it. More incredible clips coming up.
There we go.
You wonder why conspiracy theorist types have a bad name. It's funny.
A nuke in D.C.? Give me a fucking break, dude.
He's a man.
Oh! Remember when he used to do that, and he would build it up, and he would do it really, really loud.
Yeah, he's got a lot of different versions of his screams. I have a lot of them right here. He does this one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I love that one. I like this one, though. And then that was pretty good. Yeah, got a lot of different ones of Alex Jones over here.
It is Sunday, 2017. We're going to be live for the next 17 hours, folks. Unbelievable news I have with me. Paul Joseph Watson.
You piece of shit.
The social justice warriors. The social justice warriors.
Yeah,
The soy boys.
So, when it comes to what Alex Jones was talking about, he's talking about the deep state and Trump and what is the deep state capable of doing when their back is up against the wall, like it is supposed to be right now with the FBI and all this kind of Russian collusion, manufactured evidence stuff. What do you think about all this bullshit? Jay?
And memos now.
Yeah. I mean, dude, we have on I don't know how many podcasts and talks the last year have just covered this nonstop, and everything that we've said was absolutely correct. So the whole Russia collusion narrative has collapsed like 10 times, dude. It's collapsed worse than the trade towers collapsed. Like, it's just collapsed over and over and over. Just like perpetual repeat collapse. Everything we said about it was correct, and that's because I talk to people that analyze Russia like regularly. So not hard to figure out. But at the same time,
Wait. You're saying you're working with the Russians?
Are you colluding?
So I do a blog with a guy who is a fluent Russian guy. So if you mean, he's not Russian though. It's Mark Hackard at Soul of the East, but no, he's not Russian.
Okay. Sure he's not.
But I interviewed Putin's advisor, just like Alex did. So I guess does that make me a Russian agent? Maybe, I don't know.
Probably these days, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think it's a little ridiculous to go to that extreme of apologetics, which is what Alex is doing there, like Trump apologetics, where it's like every single event is all, kind of just orchestrated, it's like the linchpin of the universe right now is Trump in Alex's mind. And like, that's everything hinges on this, and literally nukes could be going off. This is as dumb as the doomsday clock, as I called it, where they were putting out this news about the doomsday clock is literally at the point of midnight because of Trump's tweet and climate change.
You gotta warn people.
Crazy.
That is the dumbest thing ever.
It's I've never seen, like, I've listened to Alex Jones for a long time. I've never seen him up this far someone's ass, especially a sitting president. And he does a good job of excusing everything Trump does or says. And yeah, I get it. Like, the entire mainstream media is against Trump, and a good majority of the intelligence agencies are against Trump. But Alex Jones should be there to kind of mediate and temper the excitement about this. But he's not. He's all on board. And as far as I'm concerned, Alex Jones has transformed into a political pundit where he used to be a conspiracy theorist. And he's just another political talking head competing with Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck at this point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe when you get to that level, I mean, I don't know what it's like being at that level of pundit. Maybe you realize, maybe I can't do this truth game much longer. I got to move into, like the Hannity pundit sphere, and I'll just be in the class with the, Michelle Malkins and the Hannitys.
Wow, I mean, Alex Jones is just a lowly water filter salesman and vitamin salesman from Texas. He can barely compete with those bigger talking heads on Fox News. But
well, remember how bad he used to rant against all those pundits. He used to go off against Michael Savage nonstop.
Oh, absolutely.
Wiener Savage, right? Wiener Savage. He was always, Wiener Savage.
He absolutely talked shit about Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Savage. He talked about, but now he has Savage on his show. Look, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. He's trying to. He in order to get some people on his show, he's got to basically bow and bend a knee a little bit. Although I do like Alex, I love listening to him. He's very entertaining.
It's entertaining.
It's very entertaining. If anybody wants to give a call in 614-388-9109, we can take your call. We'll be mostly happy to talk to you. Jay will be mostly happy to take questions from you concerning anything from philosophy to the Gaia Network, which you're on. And I want to ask you about the Gaia Network since you're on there. Do you guys have Gaia parties, like where you all get together and like do like a Christmas party for all the different shows?
And everything is yoga. Yes. So Christmas parties are yoga. Santa comes, he does yoga. We do yoga with elves. We put on elf tights instead of yoga pants. It's elf tights. We do yoga that way.
You do some hot yoga with you in the North Pole. Makes no sense, but I get it. I have the Gaia channel. Like I ordered it after we talked last time you were on, and I actually enjoy a good majority of their programming. It's actually quite interesting.
Well, see, a lot of people. I don't work for Gaia, so I keep getting asked this question. I work for me independently.
Sure.
And actually, that show was produced through Jay Widener's company, and then Gaia is kind of like the distributor. So it's kind of like.
Okay.
It's kind of like, does Oprah work for ABC or whoever runs the Oprah show? Or something? No, I don't. Not really. But I'm not. Did I just compare myself to Oprah?
Yes,
Damn.
you did.
I like Oprah a lot. Are you going to run for president too?
Yeah.
Hey, so by the way, I've already watched your series twice, and it's excellent.
Oh, cool.
And you apparently have a season 2 coming. Is that correct?
I don't actually know. That decision is made at the corporate level, and they wait until all the metrics come in. So a lot of this first season just recently went to Xfinity and these different networks. Amazon Prime was a little bit behind on the release of episodes, so it'll probably be another month or two before all of the metrics come in. But it's not up to me. So if you do really like the show, then I would say message Gaia or comment under the videos and say, I want another season of this. That's the best way to do it. Or send an email to the production, whatever, staff or whoever.
Sure.
So, but ultimately none of that's up to me. I have no idea.
It's one of these things like the Gaia Network, with the content that they're putting out, and your show in particular is just one of these where it's like, wait, is this allowed to get out to the public? There's too much in it.
Yes, yeah, see, it was not easy to get this to happen, and that's why Jay's company produced it, and Gaia was just kind of like, well, we'll run it, but they didn't want to kind of go the full production route.
Okay.
You guys want to talk about some Vegas stuff? Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Also, by the way, can I add too real quick, just
sure.
More shameless promo. There has been some whispers, and there might be another kind of show with some big name people that's in the works, and that could happen. It would not be Hollywood Decoded, but if Hollywood Decoded doesn't have a second season, I'm saying that there are other possibilities of a different kind of even bigger running show than that.
So there may be a show.
That's all that works.
There may be a show, perhaps with some people coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yes. Very ambiguous.
Well, you have to be careful about how those, those, you can't say, you can't say things.
I know. It's like, I can say we might be doing a show maybe with a big star where I'm not going to say any names, and you just throw it out there and let the press go wild.
Well, but then there are the NDAs that are legally like, yeah, you blew it. You say the wrong thing, and it's like, yeah, too bad.
So you have to be really vague. And it's like tomorrow night, if I debate, I can't say, not because of any legal agreement, but like if the dude doesn't do the debate, then I look like an idiot for saying I might debate the biggest YouTuber. Yeah. Or and it's not PewDiePie, but one of the top.
Sure.
Is it some makeup girl who puts on
Jenna Marbles?
That would be hilarious. I would love to do one of those kind of debates. And somebody was sending me debates earlier between all these trannies, and they were like, "Hey, what do you think about alt-right dudes that want to bang trannies?" And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. That's gross. And they're like, "What do you think about this one?" And I was like, so there's like these tranny debates, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be on tranny debates. I'm not involved in the tranny debate.
I think we should do one. Come on, just do one.
It would be funny to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd say, but we do have some tranny news coming up later, I suppose. But I don't know if there's debates traditionally, but we'll move on. We got some Vegas news to get to, definitely. Yeah. And it is some Vegas news, talking about the Vegas shooting. And I'll put that up on screen here so everyone can read along at home. And I'm just putting up the headline here. I'll play the actual video on the other screen over here. But it says, Vegas killer Stephen Paddock's prostitute lover vanished before deadly shooting spree. And Radar Online learned just before the rampage, Paddock began sending bizarre text messages to another of Mikhaila's call girls' pals, showing he was becoming completely unhinged and paranoid. There's a message where Stephen is telling her he's a government experiment and that they are listening to everything he says and does, and they can hack into his brain and take over, according to this prostitute. Now, I never bought that Stephen Paddock was a lone gunman. He was angry and he just did this out of the blue. It absolutely made zero sense to me. And all these little drips of new things that come out, and the Metro Police stalling to release warrant information on who they might be investigating if this is a closed case. It makes no sense whatsoever. There is some kind of weird FBI or CIA connection, some kind of Defense Department connection here that they just do not want to acknowledge because it's so embarrassing for them.
Something. What do you think, Jay? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's come out. The story kept changing. The police. Yeah. I mean, it's like who knows what to believe, and the media stopped talking about it in a big way, which like Sandy Hook went on for months. But like, it's just really curious how this one apparently went very bad, or I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, it seemed to be so incoherent and so contradictory that it almost just like cycled out of the news. The news cycle automatically. It was gone after like a month, and then it was like done. And you're right, Sandy Hook, they just kept pushing that. And I think that probably because Sandy Hook was mainly focused on gun restrictions and safer cities and all this kind of stuff, and they weren't getting that same traction out of this story. This story was just kind of unraveling. So that's probably why it was dropped. And it did seem to point so clearly to the deep state. And then you get into like this, are the Saudi princes in Vegas at the same time, and then the arrests of the Saudi princes. And I was following all that intently, and it got to the point where it was just like, I literally cannot make sense of this. Like nothing in this makes any sense, which that alone, I think, shows this is some kind of giant psyop. I mean, it's just so obvious. And I think who was the witness guy?
Oh, someone's calling me. Haha. I am not going to answer that right now.
Stephen Paddock calling you.
It was actually from Las Vegas.
Whoa, dude.
And then they had the pedophile shit forever.
It's Chris Angel. Chris Angel made Stephen Paddock do it through demons.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I just got a call from Las Vegas, my personal phone.
Are you shitting me?
No, I'm not joking at all.
Because it's okay, fair enough.
I don't know what happened, but I wanted to bring up another story that kind of we don't often talk about anymore because it just kind of fell by the wayside. And Stephen Paddock's him claiming, at least to a prostitute, that he has been taken over by federal government or some kind of deep state mind control agents, reminded me of the Navy Yard shooter.
I was about to mention the Navy shooter, yeah.
And the Navy Yard shooter claimed, and I'll bring this up on screen so everyone can look at this article, that he had, or on his gun, he had something very bizarre carved into his gun, which is better off this way in my ELF weapon, or extremely low frequency weapon, which is this guy also claimed to be under the form of mind control in some way.
Right.
I think there's too many different instances of this to just dismiss as crazy, and something else is going on here.
Yeah, I think either these stories are planted to confuse and obfuscate, or these are real stories of people who, one thing that can happen to a person who does undergo trauma and mind control is that they themselves can be confused. So they can actually be traumatized with nonsensical things at times. Actually, John C. Lilly in his book talks about this. I've been covering this week. He's one of the MK Ultra doctors, and he actually writes about how you can traumatize people and give them stupid memories in the midst of the trauma, so that if they try to explain the trauma, they sound like lunatics.
What if you're already full of stupid memories like myself? So I might be immune to this kind of stuff. But, like, what kind of...
Explain Chelsea Manning as well, with the alt-right hangouts and all this shit, and then just like spying and everything. Like, I keep thinking, like, man, they got this guy, put him in prison, psyched the shit out of him, turned him into a tranny, and now this guy don't know what's what.
Yeah, I think that's a big-time psyop, just because it's so preposterous. And, I mean, the story itself was ridiculous about him just putting stuff on a Lady Gaga CD or some bullshit like this. Give me a break. Like, that's how the NSA operates, is, it's that easy to do this stuff. And the same story with Snowden, I think, is a little dubious. But anyway, I mean, John C. Lilly says that you can do this with mind control. You can actually give people false memories. You can give them confused memories. You can re-imprint things through, and it's literally a scientific technique. I thought I had the book sitting here, but I don't see it. But I can go get it if we can read the quotes out of it if we want. But I didn't...
Who he is, real quick. Just give us a quick summary of who that is.
So I was even, like, I've researched MK Ultra for a long time, and I was still skeptical to a degree of the idea that you could, to a scientifically precise level, like, re-imprint somebody with memories. I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. I mean, I've done acid before. I've had bad trips. I could see how maybe. But no, he actually wrote this book. He's one of the MK Ultra doctors. He is known for the flipper stuff. Like, he writes about programming dolphins with LSD and all this kind of shit. Literally. So there's a movie about him called Day of the Dolphin with, I think, Gregory Peck. I believe it's Gregory Peck. And he gives Flipper a bunch of LSD, and they try to create dolphin assassins. I promise you that's true. It sounds totally retarded and crazy, but it's true.
Sounds like a good movie.
Well, and the thing is, like, can they fuck too? Because dolphins, I understand it, they're very, like, sexual with humans and dolphins.
That's what this article was like. So this Guardian article talks about him and his crew having this weird sexual bond with the dolphins. And I was just like, this is too crazy. There's got to be more to this. So I got his book, and his book is called Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer. And it's absolutely unreadable. It's the worst book I've ever read. You cannot follow what he's saying.
So you're recommending it?
No.
Well, maybe he would sell more copies if he called it like dolphin sex or how I fuck dolphins during my
like,
summer
like
vacation.
fucking Flipper, right? Effing Flipper, right?
Yeah.
50 Shades of Flipper.
Yes, there we go, Joe. That's the title we needed. Thank you.
Flipper bangs.
Pass.
So, I mean, it is. So,
This is the Flipper pickup community. He's like the Flipper pickup artist or something.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's bestiality. Whether a dolphin fucks you or if you're fucking a dolphin, it's bestiality and it's wrong across so many barriers. It's just wrong. But when it comes to programming,
but what I'm saying is that gives you an insight into the mindset of the people that we're talking about. We're not talking about virtuous, noble scientists, Sir Isaac Newton crap. We're talking about lunatic degenerates who write books about not just bestiality with dolphins and Flipper, but literally wiping kids' minds, dude. He talks about that in the book. Literally, he says, I can take children and wipe their minds with LSD. And this is like a government-funded, famous dude.
That's what's so great about all this MK Ultra stuff is how legit it is. You could find those old 70s and stuff like that, church committee and all these stuff. Like we all kind of knew, like, hey, wait, so you're taking our money to like dose a bunch of people that you then like who knows what happens with this, and then the dolphin thing, and then the bombs and stuff. It's like this is all very strange. Why are you doing this?
This is where the isolation pod stuff and the isolation water tank, all that's is John Lilly. If you saw that, there's a crappy movie based on him too, Altered States. That's the John Lilly character there.
Oh.
well, have you ever done LSD or anything like that, Jay?
Yeah, we just did a stream where we were telling bad we had this stream planned out to do this political commentary, and somehow it turned into bad LSD tales. So
Love it. Well, I wasn't sure. Did you use it LSD for fun, or did you use it for like some kind of spiritual journey?
no, I was 17 and was totally in the realm of just going to have fun, trying to get laid, and it ended up breaking my mind. So it turned into a nightmare. I went into another dimension. I saw Walter Matthau's face melted. By the way, don't ever do LSD. Well, I wouldn't recommend LSD, but especially don't do it at grumpier old men in the theater. That's the worst.
God, that is a really bad music choice or movie choice. That's exactly what'll give you a bad trip.
Okay, but I'm from a redneck town with only 2 movies. So the other movie was like, something retarded like Dunstan Checks In. So actually, I should have done Dunstan Checks In, right? Instead of, that probably would have been a more pleasurable experience. But that probably kicked off the domino effect of the bad trip, was seeing Walter Matthau's face melt. And then I had to be taken to the party house, and then I laid in the bathroom for 4 hours, and it was a nightmare.
Well, I mean, the reason why I ask is because, the CIA experimented with LSD, and they had, the Project Stargate. They used remote viewing. They tapped into some stuff. They have, documents that are released now about the cosmic consciousness and being able to use meditation to travel forwards and backwards in time. They know a lot of shit. The CIA knows a lot of stuff, and I'm assuming at that point a lot of other intelligence agencies know a lot of shit about not only this reality but also how to control other people's minds. And so, how far down the rabbit hole do you go? And does it stop for you at any point? Like, if you're going to go into MK Ultra and controlling other people's minds, will you then make a leap into a one consciousness? We are destined for other dimensions at some point.
So some of the original theorists, like some Jesuits like Teilhard de Chardin, they were talking about the noosphere, and the noosphere, interestingly, would actually be influential in how people would propose the theory of the possibility of the internet. And so I was watching a documentary last night that I put up on my website that I'd never seen. This is a really good documentary. It's called The Net, and it's about the Unabomber and LSD and MK Ultra. And again, I've studied this stuff for like 10 years, and there was information in that documentary I'd never seen before. And they were interviewing people who were formative in terms of the rise of the internet, Cold War dudes and this kind of stuff, military guys who were, had been tripping acid, and they were like, I was up on my roof and I did acid and I realized we could have internet. But some of these other philosophers, literally, that's what he says, that some of these other philosophers had been proposing, the idea of the noosphere, and maybe we could connect everything through, what you're talking about in some way, I guess. So I don't know how far we can go with all that, but what I try to do is document and give a solid basis for, anything I'm writing about or talk about. So I always have a stack of books here in case something comes up. Somebody's like, you're full of shit. I'll be like, oh, here's this fucking book. Read this book. So John C. Lilly shows to me that they are thinking in that way. How far they can go with that, I don't know. I don't think the Mandela effect's true. I think that's a bunch of retard stuff. No offense to you guys if you're if you're retards that believe it.
Oh, yes, it's fair enough.
Defend it all the time.
I believe other retarded things, but not specifically that.
So, do I think we can go into other dimensions? I don't know. I mean, that's a
that quantum stuff, string theory, and all that.
Using your like the Buddhist monks who are able to meditate and become so one, kind of, and they are able to transcend the third and fourth dimension, and all that kind of weird.
Well, I do think that meditation and the astral stuff is true. In fact, one of the guys that I promote is Father Seraphim Rose, and he has a book about that very thing. So, because he used to do like Eastern meditation, and then he went into Orthodoxy. So he talks about that in some of his books. I'm not saying it's true just because of him, but I mean, I've had other LSD experiences where they weren't just bad trips, but there was like something is going on here where different realms are kind of connecting. So I do think that that's true and possible. That doesn't mean I would recommend LSD for doing that. I mean, this is really the ancient testimony of shamanism, right? I think the shamans are writing and talking about the spiritual realm, for good or for ill, right? Demonic or angelic.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, how does one, when it comes to like the shaman, like ancient, not even ancient, but just Native Americans and their lore, like how do you distinguish what is a demon and an angel in Western terms?
Well, this is interesting. All right, so there's this book. I can't pronounce the dude's name, and this keeps coming up, so I can go get the book here in a minute. But it's a famous treatise on the history of Indian philosophy, and then there's Mircea Eliade, who's probably the most famous comparative religion scholar of the 20th century. He has a book on shamanism, and so what's interesting is that in both of these books, ancient Vedic Aryan texts, the Vedas and whatnot, and in the shaman book that Eliade has, he says that through his research of shaman practices all over the world, he says you can find the same patterns. And one of the most fascinating patterns is this whole idea of being of the astral body or the spiritual soul of the body, so whatever you want to call it, that when it goes into this realm, if it's the person who's kind of designated to be the future shaman, they go through a process where they're dismembered in this bad trip, quite literally. And oftentimes this is done through the inducement of drugs. So they go through this dismemberment process, and they say that it's almost always demonic. And then they get reassembled, put back together, and then they come back from the trip, from being in the spiritual realm or whatever. And they feel like that, they've gone through that is the initiation process. And he makes the argument that universally that's always the case in every shamanic tradition. So to me, that says there is a pattern of a principle at work here across these different cultures and religions that is the same beings involved in this process. Otherwise, it would be all over the board. In other words, a lot of people argue that it's just people's minds causing this. It's just what's in their mind. Why would disparate cultures and people going through this process have the same pattern across the board? That's impossible.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to just spontaneously have the same kind of experience.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so I think that shows this has to be an interaction with some spiritual plane.
I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I'm curious if you've heard of the guy Jan Irvin. Do you know this guy and his work? Yeah. Okay, that reaction says it all. Because he gets into a lot of this like ancient mushroom cult Christianity stuff and everything else.
Yeah, Jan and I, we are oil and water. We do not get along. We do not talk. I did an interview with him that turned into a debate a long time ago. And so since then we do not interact, and I don't even mention him.
He's a very rigid individual. I get that sense.
So my view of I do not believe, obviously, the mushroom theory of the Bible. I think that's kind of silly. And in fact, a lot of CIA promoted people, I'm not accusing him of that. I'm saying that people like Carlos Castaneda and actually Carl Jung promoted the idea that the Bible was the result of some kind of hallucinogenic drug. Anyway, I don't buy any of that. In fact, I have some talks that deal with that in length. If somebody wants to go watch my Daniel talk or my Gnostic talk or my talk on the Gospels, where I just don't find that to be a coherent argument. I think and by the way, I think the person who came up with that, his name off the top of my head escapes me, but he's a dubious character. Not Jan, but I'm saying there's a guy who wrote a book.
Something A starts with an A. He was like the only non-religious person who was allowed access to the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes, this sounds like the right guy. It's and then Carl Jung. I don't know whether he or Jung proposed the thesis first, but I don't find it convincing.
John,
I've had good and bad trip experiences.
John M. Allegro, was it him?
That's it.
Yep. And to the tripping stuff, that I do want to ask you about ayahuasca, but I think I was about 17 when my pothead friends convinced me to try it. And I always had good trips. I'll knock wood because I haven't done it in years. But I actually found a lot of what people do say about that stuff to be pretty true, where you do sort of you see almost everything. It's like it's new, but you know what it is, and you kind of understand a lot more about it. What's more valuable and less valuable, and I think it really does put you in touch with something very real, which is why I think when they talk about ayahuasca trips for the PTSD soldiers and things like this, do you buy that this is something that they're suppressing? Like these things can unlock human intelligence and understanding and what's going on, and they realize like, hey man, you guys are fucking us over.
Yes.
And then they're all gonna wake up.
Well, I do buy that the big pharma has a stranglehold on a lot of natural products, and especially marijuana. I think that marijuana could have a lot of positive uses, and I do think that has been suppressed for a long time because of big pharma. I think that when you get into the things like ayahuasca and DMT and the harder stuff, and yes, I know that technically marijuana
I need some marijuana.
Sorry.
Is that RuPaul?
No, it's B. Arthur, I believe, or something like that.
I had the real pot. The real pot. I had it, but after 3 days of fighting with my husband and no sleep and taking abuse from my next-door neighbor, my husband took it away from me just 20 minutes ago.
You got a shitty husband.
I actually mistook B. Arthur for RuPaul. That's crazy. Listen to the voices, dude. It sounds the same.
Yeah. Well, that's a good...
Turn to the left. Turn to the right.
Work it, girl. Do your thing. We know the song, though, Jay.
Give it a whirl. There's one song on your phone, and it's that, and it's on repeat.
Mm-hmm. Ringtone.
So what about trips?
Anything.
Oh, I think the harder stuff is dangerous. All right, so I don't want to get boring here, but I think it's too dangerous to say, oh, everybody should be doing this. And all the people who were telling everybody to do it are a bunch of fucking wacko evil dudes like Tim Leary. Those guys are...
Yep.
I think what you're saying here is kids don't do drugs. All right?
Well, I'm saying that marijuana has more positive effects than even alcohol. It's hard to argue that.
It is.
Yes.
So...
Oh, yeah, big time.
I mean, there's no one answer fits everything in this situation. So
let's talk about some other topics here that I have right now. We're going to move on over there.
I smoke as much grass as you do.
Yes, that's true. And right here, I have a story that
By the way, there's a hilarious article that's an old article at Jay's Analysis. And it's a guy wrote an alchemical analysis of the Golden Girls. And it's genius, and it's really funny.
Wait, it's called what?
An alchemical analysis of the Golden Girls and what's the Urkel show? What was he on?
Family Matters.
Family Matters, yeah.
And Family, yeah. So, dude did an alchemical analysis of those two shows. It's really funny. It's worth reading.
I love
like
Family Matters.
Vintage stuff. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
It's all
I
right.
just found it on your site. You got a little link to everything, and so cool. That'll be some fun reading. I mean, Golden Girls was like it's an iconic show.
Yeah, you could. I mean, it was like a sitcom with old people, right? Yes, and they were friends. It was like the Friends and Seinfeld before they were friends.
And one of them was a whole.
Citizen Friends, right?
Yes. This this story is titled "I Lost My Virginity to a Busty Alien Called Crescent." This is on This Morning TV show. So,
So your first alien encounter was at the age of 8. What happened?
Well, I was living on a farm, and I was behind our barn playing at the base of a tree. And I heard someone say, "David, behind you." And I turned around, and there was this little hairy guy coming out of the woods straight toward me.
oh boy.
And his eyes were like glowing. And he scared the hell out of me. I didn't know what to think of him. So I scrambled back, and I ran to the barn, and I looked back, and he was he had turned and was going back into the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And later that day, I still remembered it, and I went back out to the barn, and I was looking at the edge of the trees.
Guy, a glass of fucking
And-
water.
What's that?
Get him a glass of water. He sounds dehydrated.
He
or
is.
something.
His dentures are very dry. He's got dry teeth. It's a common problem in the elderly or the near
Well,
dead.
it's well known that when you have sex with aliens, it saps your bodily fluids.
Absolutely right, Jay. It does drain you. It dehydrates you. Having sex with multiple aliens at various times in the continuum. But let's go on and see what he says.
Suddenly, the little hairy guy stepped out from behind a tree. Then I turned and ran.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean,
That's-
that's one of the things that obviously that most people would have done. But this was the beginning of many encounters with many different kinds of aliens.
Yes, that's right.
And one
I
of them,
fucked them all.
one of the aliens that came to see you, you became to have a relationship with. This wasn't just a
You
sort of-
lost your virginity
You
at
did.
17.
Yes, I did.
And,
Did you bring
and,
condoms?
and this is Crescent, the alien Crescent.
Yes.
Who wasn't
Right.
little and hairy like the guy that you'd seen before. This was a different form of alien. What does she look like?
Yeah, what?
Well, she has, I think she wears a wig. I'm not really sure, but she has black hair, large black eyes, a very pale face. The body looks quite human. And I think she has rather long fingernails.
So there's a lot more here, and this morning show give this person another 2.5 minutes to explain his side of him losing his virginity to some aliens.
Yeah, but you could have brought like 5 more homeless guys in to fill that time to tell stories about yelling at cars and how the skin just can't stay on their body. Like, this guy seems like a homeless dude. They put a fucking coat on.
I like this guy. I'm not going to discount his story so far. He hasn't even gotten into any details yet. I don't know. So far up front, more credible than Peter King, the Bigfoot guy. I want to believe. Oh my God, we got a phone call right now. Caller, go ahead.
Aliens, they're coming to Earth, y'all.
Yeah, they are. The aliens are coming to Earth. How can we help you? You are on the air.
Because you're a
What's up,
goddamn
guys?
cunt!
Want to call in, say what's up to you guys, say what's up to Jay. And
Word.
so you guys were on the mushroom cult topic.
Yes.
And talking about Leary and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I know Jay gets into a lot of critical analysis of people's work like that. I was wondering if he's ever read anything by Robert Anton Wilson, and what he thinks. What's his angle on all what Robert Anton Wilson's philosophy might entail.
Yeah, I've read 2 of his books. I read Lucifer Rising, or what are they? I read those 2 that he wrote about like culture and analyzing news and reading both sides and all that. So I think that he was in a way a kind of an illuminist, because he did have some influence from Crowley and all that kind of stuff. And he's one of the first people actually to propose.
Yeah. He definitely quotes a lot of Crowley.
He's one of the first. Right. He's one of the first people to propose the 2012 thing, like the December 2012 Mayan calendar crap. It was a bunch of baloney. So I would be suspect of Robert Anton Wilson. I know about the Illuminatus trilogy, and I think that he was there to promote discord. There's a whole Discordian branch of this kind of stuff. And
basically he's one of the people that founded Discordianism.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So, on the one hand, there were interesting insights into mastering both sides of a dialectic. So, ironically, he actually discusses transcending dialectics, which is something I talk about a lot. But I don't think that his answer of, whatever kind of occultism he preferred is the way out of that dialectic.
True. You do see some positive things in his work too, no?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like
something that you can make positive.
What do you mean by make positive? You can make anything positive.
Well, I mean the whole concept of the reality tunnels and whatnot. I kind of like that concept.
That was it.
I'm kind of with it in a way, but I see where you're coming from as well.
Well, for one thing, I believe there is objective absolute truth. So anybody whose philosophy comes along and tries to promote the idea that is itself a myth, and I think that most of the occultic positions, many of the Gnostic positions, they all kind of go off into this relativism where you can't even have like a basic philosophical debate or conversation, because they end up saying there's no such thing as objective truth, cultural relativism, moral relativism. So all those things I disagree with, but that doesn't mean,
And even what you were saying earlier about the projected realities and stuff, we talked about the CIA and all that, but they said with these are science articles that came out in the last several years about how we're just a projected hologram, which is like, well, then why the fuck does anything matter?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a distraction. Yeah.
That's a hard reality.
So, Jay, do you feel that it's humanity's duty to find an objective truth? Or, I guess that's kind of the best way I can put it.
Well, so
are you
my
kind
view,
of like an Epicurean? Not Epicurean, like a...
No. So
well, I know you're not a Platonist, so...
Right.
Platonism it's our responsibility to find this objective truth or live in objective truth?
So Platonism can oftentimes be a good bridge for people to get into this topic and to understand how there is such a thing as objective truth. So, for example, an easy example of this was things like mathematics. I don't believe that math is a social construct. Like we don't decide as a society that the number 7 doesn't exist, and then forever from then on math and change at the counter is all fucked up. I mean, that's just not coherent. So there are things that are immaterial, that are invariant, that are unchanging, like abstract concepts or mathematical entities. And that's one great bridge or way to step into the idea of how there can be absolute truth or objective truth that's not something physical or material. So everything in the physical world has a tendency to change over time, and it's in flux. So a lot of people will say, well, how do we ever get objective truth if things are always changing, or the only constant is change? And I'm saying, well, no, there's actually a lot of things that don't change, that are objective and 100% true and will always eternally be the same. And so you're never going to get the number 2 becoming the number 10. And that's true in, as philosophers say, in all possible worlds. And you can actually demonstrate that. So that's one way to step into objective truth, is to consider that if we don't believe in objective truth, then knowledge is not possible.
True. And I just want to add to this a simple analogy. It's like you can have no cancer and then have cancer. You can have all your body parts and then not have all your body parts. There's something else that gets in the way that changes all these things. Mm-hmm. And once you start to say, like New York City recently defined that there's, I don't remember, it's like in the 50s of genders. Right. But then you have people on YouTube
47. Like Baskin Robbins.
and even Mike brought up, Bill Nye earlier when we were comparing him to the sniper, Jordan Peterson. Yes. And he says that gender is a spectrum, which if I think of a spectrum, well, you can't put a number on it. So don't go legislating any numbers. You just got to say it's infinity. And then you got to have to deal with this when it's Father-Daughter Day at the dance recital in New York City.
Well, they banned that.
I know, they banned that. I submitted that.
That's not happening anymore, Joe.
You can't do Father-Daughter Day.
Even that one...
That's too many labels in one shot there.
Even that one trans person, Blair White, that the alt-right wackos say they want to bang, which is nasty and gross. That, even Blair White says... even though I'm trans, I know that my biology hasn't changed because I got a surgery. She admits that. He, she, whatever it is. He admits that.
Yeah.
So let's
dude, I've thought about this a lot with the Caitlyn Jenner shit. I was like, really? This is all you got to fucking do to be Woman of the Year? This is some weird shit. And then he supports Ted Cruz, and it's like, well, fuck you. We're done with that guy, girl, whatever,
okay.
Woman of the Year.
So let me make this one point. So everybody missed my argument when I made that Jordan Peterson video, and they don't understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's actually an attack on language and reality. And Bertrand Russell, I do talks on Bertrand Russell's books. He said, like 100 years ago, almost, that this would be the strategy by which they could reconstruct society and fuck everybody up, is to screw up language. And one way that you do that is to divorce the thing, the object, or the referent from the word. So in other words, I can say this thing is no longer objectively male or female. It's a social construct, and that's all determined by language in their view, right? So in their view, all you got to do is introduce a whole bunch of new pronouns, and that actually determines the lens that people use to interpret the world. Now, I don't believe that that's true, but I'm saying
true.
that's...
Philip K. Dick said language creates reality.
And that gets me back to what I think we need to do is get you and Jan Irvin back into a show where you debate, because for Pete's sakes, that was his whole thing, was like spells, and spelling is like casting spells over reality. Do you remember this was his whole thing, was like language casts spells on reality?
Okay, but I'm saying that that's not fully true. So, for example, in philosophy, it's called realism, or the idea that words and concepts match up truly and really to things in the world. I'm saying that's true. And what they want to do is fuck with that and say, no, you can like redefine reality just through changing the syllables. That's stupid. That's preposterous. That's the same as saying that if we just change the number 7 and the way we say it, that it's no longer the number 7. Just think about how dumb that would be when you try to get your change back or you get a check. I mean, when you get paid $700, are you going to accept that the number 7 is not 7 anymore? Now you get $200 because the 7 is turned to 2. That's crazy. And no, Jan won't ever come back on it. He won't. We don't interact. We got to like a very serious stage of
barb throwing.
Beyond that.
Oh wow. Well, but I just mean
like we will not be in the same room anymore ever.
Because you guys are basically in a Cold War.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's fine. I don't listen to the guys anymore. I mean, I used to love his show back in the day, and I don't listen to him anymore. But I know that was his big thing, was that law is about language. And if you can interpret the language back, then you could see and it got into the whole thing, like when the government capitalizes your name versus, you know what I mean? It was a lot of.
Yeah. So that's not kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, I might agree with his basic premise about language matching up to the objects in the world, which is just kind of a basic issue of philosophy. And it is correct to say that like deconstructionists who were actually aided and funded by the CIA, the deconstructionist philosophers, this is going to be in my new book, by the way, though. I'll be dealing with some of that. They wanted to divorce meaning from the object, and that they knew that if they did that, they could reorganize society. This comes up in that documentary, The Net. You got to watch it, because they interview the Vienna Circle philosophers and guys who had read Wittgenstein and guys who had read Diderot and guys who had read Derrida, Derrida, and these different deconstructionists, because they realized that by fucking with language, you could destroy the culture. And that's what 1984 talks about. 1984, if you remember, there's all these laws and rules about words and what you can and can't say, and hate think, right? Hate thought, hate speech, all that stuff is directly 1984 stuff. And so the tranny stuff is a means by which you can socially engineer the culture by making it about, quote, rights. But I could tear apart natural rights philosophy in like 20 seconds. It's easy to tear that apart. On what basis do you know where do the natural rights come from? How do you know what they are? If you say nature, well, nature evidences pederasty and animals eating other animals. So how do you get that from nature?
So okay, let's take this in a different direction. Not as hardcore. Hey, caller, thank you for your call. Do you have anything else before I let you go?
No, that's it. You said you got a new book coming out, Jay. What's going to be in this book? Are you going to get a little more philosophical?
Yes and no. Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
Don't forget this one while it's still.
Yeah, you can still get that one in my website. So the second one will be longer. It'll be a different approach to the movies. It'll be similar in ways, but it's going to be, the first section will be mafia and Hollywood and spies and cults. And then it'll be in a section on other occult films that I didn't cover that I wanted to. Then it's going to move into mind control in film. And what I'm going to do is demonstrate how in all these films about mind control, and there's a shit ton of them, there's a lot of truth. And then I'm going to go into the crazy realms of like Hollywood transhumanism and that kind of stuff. So it'll be, I wouldn't say more philosophical. It'll be about the same because there was a good dose of philosophy in the first book. But
all right. Well, hey, thank you for your call, buddy.
Sounds awesome. Sure thing. Have a good night, Mike.
All right,
Good night, guys.
thank you. Word.
You piece of shit.
So what I wanted to get back to was this guy who claims that he lost his virginity to aliens.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, we're talking about.
It sounded like a Christina Ricci. It was like small, pale-faced, dark hair. I'm thinking Christina Ricci alien.
We're talking about truth, and this guy probably believes that this actually happened to him, and I want to believe that this actually happened to him. Although I didn't lose my virginity in this way, so I can't even wrap my mind around how it would be to have sex with an alien, let alone have that be your first sexual encounter. He's trying to convince the world that this happened to him, and he's being ridiculed, made fun of on a morning show in Australia, for all I know, or the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his world. This is his truth. It happened to him. He's trying to convince the world. I was molested by aliens. I lost my virginity to a girl from Venus who had a very nice body. That's his truth. There's nothing wrong with that. When, in your opinion, Jay, does that start to become wrong? And does it? Or does it?
It's not a wrong or right issue. I don't mean to steal your thunder, but in my mind, it's like, I don't know if it's a wrong or right issue.
I love this. This is the first time that I've had an ethical question relating to aliens. Can you rephrase it? What's the question?
Sure. This guy, he's on the air. He's being broadcasted to millions of people.
Right.
And he is saying, I lost my virginity to multiple different species from off-world, and I liked it, and I would do it again. And he's being ridiculed, but he believes it. And he's going to continue to tell the story. When does him telling the story start to become wrong, or does it ever become wrong by him believing what he does?
That could be an interesting game strategy if you're trying to get chicks. You could try it like, it should be like, are you a virgin? Like, no, I lost my V card to aliens.
Oh.
She respond. That might actually work. But so you're asking me, is it wrong that he's saying this? That he did this?
I think Mike's trying to ask, like, if you're talking about an objective truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
This guy's objective truth is that this all happened. Like,
okay.
You know, my argument would be, I know what it would be, but I don't want to steal your thunder. You take it.
No, that's cool. I mean, I would say that by definition, what objective truth means is that it's not just anyone's claim or anyone's phenomenal experience. So in other words, we can talk about different levels of truth or reality or existence. So for example, if I have something in a dream happen and I say, was it objectively true that in my dream I was married to Claire Huxtable and fighting Bill Cosby? Is that true? Well, in one sense, it's true because it was true in the dream, but it's not the same level of truth, or it doesn't have the same ontological status as if, in real life I was, going for Claire Huxtable and cock blocking Bill Cosby.
And if I could jump in there, I've heard these studies. I don't know how true they are, but they talk about with they'll have somebody rush into a crime class, and they'll take something, and then they'll ask the whole class, after this whole thing goes down, well, what color was this, and what color was the hair, and how tall was the guy? And everybody had, it's not everybody, but it's a lot of people have conflicting memories. It was a yellow shirt. No, I thought it was. You know what I mean? It's
so right. So this is
subjective in a way, but it's yeah, but there's a fault in memory, or
okay. So
let's do.
Right. Okay, good question. So basically, in philosophy, this gets down to what we know of as an empirical claim versus something that's sometimes called a priori, or true by definition. So yes, it's certainly true that empirical claims have less certainty than something like a mathematical problem, or something like all birds are birds. I mean, that's a true statement. It's known a priori. It's known prior to examination or empirical evidence. And then we have claims that are based on just empiricism or empirical evidence. And that would be, so in other words, when we investigate this guy's claim and we want to say, how do we know whether what he's saying is legit or not? Yeah. Well, this is partly based on what things we in our worldview consider possible or impossible. So I'm not saying that every empirical claim is true or false. It depends. And in the domain of empirical claims, you do have degrees of probability and certainty, right? So, but it also doesn't mean that, as some philosophers have said, that, we are at times fooled. Sometimes we think a shadow is a guy in the corner and it's just a shadow. So therefore, all empirical claims are dubious. We can doubt them all. That's a kind of an extreme. And so one thing I would talk about in this setting would be the basic reliability of sense perception. So yes, while it's true that in some cases our senses are deceived, on the whole, they're not usually deceived. So there's a high probability. Philosophers sometimes talk about what's called a warranted belief. So do I know right now that in my backyard there's not Lil Wayne and Lil Jon out there having a party? No, I don't know, because I'm not out there. I don't know.
Go out there, though.
Yeah.
Go out there, dude. Go on.
You got to warn people.
Yeah, warn people they're partying in your backyard.
Actually, bring them on. Bring them in. Let's talk to them.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I have a well-grounded, warranted belief that they're not, because it's so. What I'm saying is that there is an aspect of common sense which is true, which I think any holistic philosophy would have in their position. But I think that humans are such creatures of extremes that we oftentimes run to the extreme of some position where we might want to say, common sense philosophy, I read Thomas Reid, so all there is common sense, and everything that's outside of my definition of common sense is not true. So there's always extremes. So I want
to take the extreme here, that this guy that we're talking about, who was he was having sexual relations with aliens, I'm going to take him at his word that it's true, and it does turn out to be true. Ultimately, it does turn out to be true, but we only find out 500 years from now. In the meanwhile, he's ridiculed, he starts a cult, and it turns into some kind of, Waco situation. Is it still correct then? Is it still right, even though it leads to the deaths of thousands of people who follow him, even though he's right?
You're confusing two things. So you're asking, on the one hand, something is this metaphysically possible? And then
I know it is possible.
Well, but then you're saying
it could be objectively true, but is it objectively right to do?
No, because as even Hume, who I disagree with, but Hume was correct to point out that you can't get an ought from an is. And what he means by that is that just because something has happened doesn't necessarily mean that it should or should not happen.
So you're saying these aliens should not be raping this dude?
Shouldn't do it. And objective truth is non-linear.
I have no idea what we're saying at this point.
That's all right.
Go to it. Story.
That's all right. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on.
And this is great. This is hilarious. This is fun.
And we're just having a good time. We're partying.
Get off my phone! Get off my phone!
There is Glenn Beck right there. Joe, did you have anything to bring up before I bring up another story about gender-bending chemicals found in plastics?
I mean, I guess the only other one that I would want to get Jay's analysis on, which is, I think, the name of your podcast, right? Is Jay's Analysis.
Correct.
Yeah, so, pick that one up. But it's been these warnings. There was a tsunami warning sent from Texas to New York. It was a test. And we've had a lot of these other warnings going on. Like, do you think there's anything happening with any of that?
My first default would be PSYOP. I mean, yeah, it could be an accident, but more than one, that's kind of dubious. So if you remember back when there was Jade Helm going down,
yeah,
we had some podcasts and some articles I did on Jade Helm, and I was basically proposing the thesis that some of these events, pseudo events, are actually kind of put out there to test reactions, probably by high level military analysis, that kind of stuff. So I think it was probably just a kind of AI simulation test thing, probably something like that. And there is precedent for that.
Well, and they even said that there was like the Facebook, they were going to test emotions and all this stuff. So Department of Defense, you literally are having your money stolen for the government can work with Facebook to figure out if they can piss you off or not by changing their algorithm, which is really fucked up if you think about it.
That's a great way to put it simply. That's what it is. And by the way, there's even crazier shit with quantum computers that is on like the Raytheon Boeing website where they talk about these Jade systems. So I mean, I can't prove that Jade Helm is related to Boeing or Raytheon's Jade system, but I think it's pretty suspicious, and maybe that sounds, plausible there, where they try to have mass data analysis in a large-scale event. So they're looking at all of the nodes and who's reacting how and who's saying what and how are the right-wingers responding, how are the left-wingers responding, and how are what's happening over here, how does this affect markets? This is another thing people don't understand, is that we got a taste of this like in the last couple days with the markets. And actually Alex Jones was right when he was talking about how the manipulation of the stock market can affect politics, obviously, right? So they're trying to make Trump look bad. There's probably something to that with plunge protection team and all this stuff. I think that stuff can be manipulated. And I think the people at like the Soros level, they know how screwing with an economy can actually affect the politics and vice versa. So if you fuck up the politics, you can make money on the downturn in the economy because you know how things are going to go.
Which goes right back into mind control.
Yeah, I mean, with the stock market, it lost 1,100 points in a day, and there are indicators. There are auto trading. There's nanosecond decisions made, and if they pick up on a trend, they will start selling, and then it's easily to. It's been rumored that this is kind of like a shot across the bow to Trump and say, hey, play ball, or your precious economy that you were just talking up not but 2 weeks ago can fall very quickly. I don't know. It gets into some bizarre conspiracy land where everything is capable of being manipulated outside of the control of the normal person.
It obviously they're manipulating everything all the time, which is what the Russia thing was. We talked about it earlier. It's like there's like everything is like new evidence, Russia, Trump, blah blah blah, and like Colbert is on there saying, Trump is Putin's cock holster, which is like an anti-gay joke. And as a gay man, I'm like, wait, so now it's like bad to like be into dudes or whatever? It's just a weird world where they're manipulating all this stuff. It's just like the alarm thing going off. I really wanted to get your take. Like, people were saying, like, they literally shot down a missile. This guy did the right thing. North Korea or somebody was doing something. Israel was doing another liberty. All this shit. Like, that was some of the stuff you saw from some of the alt media. Like, there can't be any truth to that. That just sounds like complete horse shit.
Right. I would recommend on this topic, the general perspective I come from is a great book by Servando Gonzalez called Psychological Warfare in the New World Order. And he really he's a Castro expert. His whole life has been studying Castro and the CFR. So he actually argues that Castro was not this like great, Soviet anti-Western character, but that he was kind of a mole of sorts. And it's really starts to make sense. And so a lot of people who've disagreed with some of the popular videos I did on like North Korea and stuff, they don't understand where I'm coming from, to where I'm saying that politics at the level of Trump and Kim Jong, at a certain degree, that's theater. I'm not saying it's all fake. I'm not saying they're all agents, but I'm saying the way Servando Gonzalez puts it in his excellent book is you can have a guy who's allowed to remain in a region as a supposed threat to be the justification for military U.S. presence everywhere. So Kim Jong-un is a great placeholder, like bin Laden, right, to be this sort of boogeyman character that justifies U.S. presence in that area of the globe. And if you doubt that it's that mapped out, look at the map of NORTHCOM, CENTCOM, USCOM, AFRICOM. They have the map, the globe that mapped out. Like, it's that planned.
And they've got the user research that the Pentagon and other people are doing. It's like, well, how are people reacting in Singapore? How are people reacting there? It goes back to the Facebook testing shit. It's like, these people got this shit locked down. And with the NSA, it's like, you think about what they can do. Like, I've seen, so I work in advertising, and I've seen the way they can map, like, the political ideologies and conversations that are happening in real time when news stories are breaking in these very visual ways. And I think if you've got all the money in the world and no one's going to take it from you because you've got all the guns and stuff, you can actually bring in people. Always say, well, the government's too stupid to do anything. It's like, well, the things they are supposed to be doing and say that they're doing, they're really bad at. But the things that they don't want any of us want to have or whatever, it's like we don't want to bomb brown people all over the world. They're really good at that. It's so weird.
Yeah, the best model is the mafia model. Just instead of thinking about countries, just think about mobsters in different areas. That's it.
Makes sense to me. I mean, why not?
Like Kim Jong-un, I would say, is a mob guy allowed to be in North Korea.
Yeah.
Because if the U.S. wanted to, they could easily take that dude out. He's not going to nuke the fucking world. That's crazy. That dude could easily be. He doesn't have hardly any capabilities. If you actually look at what's going on in North Korea and the real status of North. By the way, there's actually a lot of fake news in the West about North Korea, and so you'll find two different conflicting stories about how North Korea really is. So I think that it's kind of like Castro. I mean, am I saying that it was great in Cuba? No. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of poverty in Cuba under Castro. But what I'm saying is that there's a damn base, a U.S. base in the middle of Cuba. You think that the United States couldn't take out this poor ass dictator dude? Of course they could, but he serves a great purpose in the same way as Kim Jong. That's my thesis. And people want to get really mad about that video and get mad about North Korea buying into this like theatric. This is no different than remember the videos of Saddam and Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands? It's the same world that we live in as it was then.
I mean, it's all PR. I mean, Osama bin Laden had the same kind of PR. It's all played up. It's all video. It's all food for thought that can be played at 6:30 on NBC, ABC or CBS nightly news, and people get their information right there. And it's a good enough villain for right now. It's not the best villain, but it's good enough for right now.
Sports, and they can quote freaking who hit which number of runs in 1974. But because they saw one clip on a fucking disappearing plane in CNN for, over the summer, it's like, come on, you're not informed. You're really not informed.
Well, look, all of those years in the Cold War of warning of Cuba and the missiles in Cuba, was anybody nuked by Castro? No. So my view is that if you look at business strategies, like nuking giant areas is bad for business.
Yeah, it's not a good business model. It's hard to make money off that one.
I don't think that the Fortune 100, which has most of the power, and then above them, of course, is the big families that run the planet. But I mean, the Fortune 100 is not going to be for a giant nuking of the planet. And
McDonald's has a lot of customers in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Not unless you own a company that runs industrial nuclear waste cleanup, and only then would it be profitable. But they might call bullshit on that. Yeah. Let's move on real quick to another story before we close down the show. I'm gonna transition, please. Here we go. 614-388-9109. You can give a call in while I read the story and get Jay's and Joe's opinion on this. And this headline says, gender-bending chemicals found in plastics are linked to breast and prostate cancer. And these are found in 86% of teenagers' bodies.
Wow.
BPA, a gender-bending chemical found in plastics linked to breast cancer and prostate cancer. So
The dudes to the alt-right guys, because if it's gender bending, they might be into this shit.
I was going to say, yeah, what are the alt-right guys? That's why they get mad when I talk about the chemicals in the food and the water. Conspiratard, give us our trannies. We want our trannies. Right. I'm joking. But, okay, so here's the thing. I did 2 videos on well, let's see, one or two videos on Jonas Salk. No, two on Jonas Salk and Arthur Kessler. And they're 2 big, giant globalists. And they say that is a 100% a plan, a strategy to fuck people's endocrine system up.
Well, I totally believe it, because this next article that I'm going to put on screen here kind of confirms what you just said and goes to the article of BPA. And this says, not just boy and girl, more teens identify as transgender. And this goes on. This comes from Chicago AP. Far more U.S. teens than previously thought are transgender or identify themselves using other non-traditional gender terms, with many rejecting the idea that girl and boy are the only options, new research suggests. I mean, this goes back to what we were talking earlier about using proper terms. And if there are chemicals that are at play here, then this is a total manipulation of not just genders, but the species.
Yes. Big. Because they have schools now that say that you don't, like in Canada, they just had the story about like, oh, you can pick any gender you want. You don't have to gender conform. So it's almost like you got the chemical thing. It's like we're under attack, people. Alex Jones has been telling us. It's like not only are they pumping you full of this shit, but then they're also going to say, hey, and by the way, you can be, we're all
getting killed here.
Whatever that is.
No, he's right.
You
In
gotta
fact,
warn people.
in Jonas Salk is the father of inoculations, right? And I'm not saying that all inoculations are bad. I had pneumonia, and I'm damn well glad that I got a shot in my butt that kept me from dying from pneumonia. But the inoculations as a whole, which are pushed on everybody, right? This is one of the top things that everybody goes to call conspiratards. Is that, oh, you don't believe in vaccines? The father of vaccines says the vaccines can be a means to fuck everybody up and kill them. He says that in 2 books, Man Unfolding and Survival of the Wisest. And yes, he says it's not just vaccines. He says a whole slew of chemicals. Arthur Kessler says it too in Ghost in the Machine. They say we've got to introduce some kind of chemicals into the species to make sure that there's not more of these people.
It kind of goes to the Georgia Guidestones. They want to reduce the population down to 500 million across the globe. They got to know what these chemicals do. They're releasing BPA into plastic linings of cups, everything. I mean, there is so much industrial waste going on that's being funneled into the food and just in the water that we're all going to die. We're all getting killed here.
Somebody sent my video to a Daily Beast writer who's some doctor on their side that defends vaccines, and they sent my video to him, and he claims he watched it. And he's like, I'm doubtful that Jonas Salk wrote that book.
Did he or didn't he?
Yeah, he did. It's a fucking book. You can buy it on Amazon. I'm like, dude, come on, dude.
Dude, that is such a really interesting point, and I'd
recommend weak sauce.
Please, listeners, check out that book and send us stuff in the Slack, which you can join emailing ourbigdumboutfit. And we have a caller.
Did we do a call?
Now let's go ahead and take the phone calls.
Caller, go ahead.
Excuse me.
Hello?
You little pinhead.
Yeah.
What's up?
What's going on? Hey.
Eddie.
What's up, guys?
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, Jordan, what's going on, buddy?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Hey, I'm at work right now, but I'm almost clocking out in a few minutes. But want to call in?
Did you get finished mopping up all the jizz on the floor?
I had to.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Mostly from this one particular guy that just can't help himself. So.
Yeah, all right. Well, okay.
It is what it is. But I wanted to call in and was going to say, how about those Philadelphians eating that horse shit? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Philly fans that were partying and rioting, and I think one guy, reached down and ate some horse shit. Big deal. Look, sometimes you get overexcited, your team wins.
Did that really happen?
True.
Yeah, I mean, look, he did it. I saw there was a video from like a hockey riot a few years ago where a guy did a similar thing. He reached down, grabbed some horse shit, and ate it. No big deal. I mean, come on.
Okay, I guess. I mean, of course, most of the guys, it's not going to be a racial thing, but most of them were white, so,
They are. I mean, when it comes to sports teams and riots like that, that's a white thing. Definitely.
It seems so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm agreeing with you. I mean, the white people like to do damage when their sports teams win. Absolutely.
Such a racist, Jordan.
But other than that, I was interested with your guest, what he was talking about.
Not Jordan Peterson. This is our token black audience member. We have like one female listener and one black listener.
Yeah.
All a bunch of drunk old dudes.
Do you feel like Jordan Peterson has culturally appropriated by using Jordan as a name? Or white dude?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, he was born before me, so I might have to think on that one. But I do agree with most of his beliefs. I mean, you know what? I'm going to start practicing my lifestyle as a lobster. And I'm going to identify myself as a lobster. And whenever someone misgendered me, I'll just scream at them and dye my hair red and just say, I'm a lobster. I'm here. And I'm going to pinch the shit out of you.
Rock lobster.
As long as I cover you in butter, Jordan, it'll be fine. And you're going to need that pop again. Just saying.
Yeah. But that'd be my that's like a sexual thing. So it's not going to be like food related. It would be sexual.
Is this getting racial? Because like, why do you you're a black guy? Why are you identifying as a lobster?
Well, I mean, this whole intersectionality bullshit. Anyone can identify as anything now. So what if I guess one day I might feel like I want to be a lobster.
I thought you just like Red Lobster or something. Go ahead. You had a question for our guest?
Yeah, I was going to say I was interested in what he was talking about. I caught up a little bit before I was heading out, just what he was talking about, the whole shaman-related kind of stuff. And I've always been fascinated by how these different cultures do seem to share similar belief systems or sort of paranormal activities that go on with them. And I was asking him, what does he think of, would anyone of today's standard could still explain what these people were describing when it comes to certain things that the shamans would say they've seen or heard? And is it still possible to recreate some of that kind of ways of what they were describing, the creatures or paranormal?
I believe that the human mind has a role in interpreting phenomena and events, and there's also there's a give and take, there's a receiving and an interpreting. So I don't believe that it's all or nothing. For example, we're not blank slates where we just all, like a camcorder, receive impressions, but it's also not the opposite view where everything is just a creation of my mind. So there's like a reciprocal view here, and there's actually a famous kind of short philosophy book that was actually the book of the year. I don't know who decides what the philosophy book of the year is, like 5 or 6 years ago, called Action in Perception by a guy named Alvin Noe. I believe he even has a Google, like a YouTube Google talk on the book. And so he's kind of right. I had to write a lot of grad papers in relationship to this. And what he's saying is that, look, it's not either or that we've been thinking since the Enlightenment. There's a reflexive process by which we both interpret the external world, and the external world imposes itself on us. So it's not either or. And so in that regard, I would say, yes, a shaman can have, or somebody who went through some kind of process like that can have things in their own mind, their own lexicon of symbols and associations that they see, quote unquote, but you can still find similar patterns across those cultures, even if the images or the archetypes differ a little bit. So in other words, the ancient sage archetype, that's going to be the same across cultures. It might be a old Chinese dude and it might be a old black dude, but it's the same old sage character across the culture.
Yeah, Jordan, get it right or pay the price. Okay.
Is Santa one of those guys?
That's an interesting. I've never thought about. Is Santa Santa might be like more of a trickster or something like that.
I like that.
You know?
Yeah, he could be a trickster.
Than the sage. But
I
that's
always kind of saw him more as the Krampus kind of entity.
Well, I mean, if you're not nice, you get coal, or I mean, no, it's like a trick or treat almost for Santa at the same time. Jordan, where are you on a plane right now? Are you in a submarine? What's going on?
No, I'm actually outside. There's a
he's
plane
on
flying by.
He's on you.
He's actually calling from the wing of an airplane. There's a man on a plane. Man on the wing of a plane.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you about Black Mirror. I'm sure you've covered this to death. Jay Dyer, Black Mirror. Give us your synopsis.
I wrote a long ass article that was tried to be a little edgy, and hardly anybody read it.
Really?
I thought that article was going to be a fucking bomb, dude, and it was like, yeah, a few hundred reads. So, I like and dislike some of the episodes. I really like the ones where it's like created environments, like White Bear, where she's, being tortured through this process of having her memory erased. That one was really good. And then the one with Opie's daughter was good, where she's trying to increase her status with like social media.
Opie's daughter.
I love
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah.
Ron Howard. Yeah.
Those two were good. I thought that last season was kind of weak, though, in my opinion.
Season 4 was a lot with love and destiny and finding your soulmate. That's my understanding of it. There were a few. I like the one where they talked the prime minister into fucking a pig.
I forgot that, and that's a great example of predictive programming. I mentioned that, because of David Cameron supposedly putting his ding-a-ling in the mouth of the pig, right?
Yeah. That was a good one there. And then they also had one, I believe it was the same season where, oh God, it was just on the tip of my tongue. They go through iterations, like the one with the cartoon character where it was like a mouthy guy. It was kind of like a Trump persona, almost kind of like cursing, kind of like.
We were talking about like maybe after Trump we'll actually just get an avatar of like a little simulation character.
Yeah, I thought that was a great parallel there. Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up another fun question. Sorry, Jordan, if you got something to interject, but I just bringing that one up. It's like you've seen the CGI things where people can like stand, they simulate, they say stuff, and they'll simulate the mouth, they'll simulate the voice, simulate George Bush or Obama or whatever. Like, isn't that where we're heading? Like, they could literally make anybody say anything, kill this person, and 3 months later they're telling you that we're being nuked.
Yeah, and in fact, we have to be dubious of the news for a long time due to that. That guy, my friend Chris pointed this out. That guy Paul Debevec, who did a lot of the inventive Matrix style stuff, like his PhD or whatever thesis back in the 90s, late 90s, he was already at like perfect reality in terms of his CGI skills, like back in the late 90s. And so that's why he went to consult on the Matrix and all this. So if you watch his video, he has this, it's his Paul Debevec, but it's a famous video where he's recreated this tower of his university, Stanford or somewhere, I can't remember. But it almost looks real, and this is like 1998. So I would say that, yes, the real technology that they have has been way ahead of what we've seen.
Yeah, Jordan, come on.
Well, that kind of sounds like, have you guys heard of VR chat?
Now Jordan's taking a dump. Listen to this shit.
Yeah,
I just heard of it today, yeah.
And now I'm in the hallway. I'm inside the building. It's a long hallway kind of building.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, VR chat is in its early stage of literal sense of like the Matrix in some ways. And have you seen? Or you probably have probably seen a trailer for that movie, Ready Player One.
Yeah.
It's basically the early version of that.
Oh.
And what Jay was mentioning, I was thinking, like, yeah, I do believe that we probably already have that tech where you can have a pretty decent semi-virtual reality world, or cause certain events like Project Blue. Was it Project
Bluebeam?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's possible, and I wouldn't be surprised when now that Trump's involved as the president, I wouldn't be surprised if something happens and it could either work for his administration or bring it down.
All right, let's be optimistic here, okay, Jordan? Can we end this call on a positive note, please?
Fine. Well, I'll let you guys go because I know you were going to talk about was it plastic turning your genders all over the place.
And that's always fun.
Well, hey, that's the future.
That's
the future of the West. Yeah, you won't be seeing that. I don't think I'll be hearing about this kind of stuff in third world countries. Well, I mean shithole countries.
Yes.
And other than that, can I get some Alex Jones screaming and yelling at me?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I am a proud shitholer.
Because you pimp so good. That's how you pimp so good.
There you go.
This is spectacular conspiracy.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Really appreciate that. We're actually going to get out of here pretty soon here.
You're true.
Yeah, we've been on for like about an hour and 45 minutes. Holy shit.
I already peed in my adult diaper 3 times. Crazy.
We're going to get... Jay, is there anything you want to leave us with? Or do you have any other websites you want to put out there before we play the outro music and get the fuck out of here? Jay fled the building. He fled.
No. I think this.
No, you can go to Jay's Analysis. You can buy my book, and you can subscribe there for the archives. And thank you, dude. Appreciate that very much. And I'll send you a signed copy. I'll draw you a little.
Send us signed copies. We have signed copies. And Jay's YouTube channel is literally Jay Dyer with Dyer.
It is. It is in the description of this video. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'll mirror this and promote you guys as well.
Yeah,
so.
Rip all our stuff off, please. Rip it off.
Dude, I hope you get a second season. I told you, it's like I watched both seasons like boom, boom, boom. Or not both seasons. The season, I watched it like once, and then I watched it again because it was like, holy crap. And then it's like, you've got this like old friend. I don't know who that guy was. What's your buddy's name? That's
James. Oh, he did the have you heard of that documentary Room 237?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Jay's a big part of that.
That's the Kubrick one, right?
Yeah.
And the moon landing and The Shining, which is my favorite theory on the whole damn thing.
Yeah, so that's Jay. That's him.
Interesting.
Oh my God! Well, fucking A, dude, get that to happen. You need to put more of this stuff out because
even if it doesn't happen, I feel like there will be other big TV shows to come that will
or crowdfund that stuff. Because last question, because I was thinking about this earlier in the week, thinking maybe it's a stupid question.
Probably.
The Star Wars, the last Star Wars movie. What do you think about that piece of shit? Okay, I tainted it.
No, you're right. It is bad. I'm with Joe.
Star Justice Warriors. That's how I think of it.
Okay, we're on the same.
I'm with Joe there. Jesus Christ.
It's a very sad thing because I didn't want to have to write off that whole series.
You're not right. I think you do it. You do what you can. J.J. Abrams is not like. Honestly, the new stories were already written. If you like the books, just reproduce Heir to the Empire when it comes to Star Wars and stop trying to recreate or reinvent the wheel. It was already written very well. The problem is when creative people like J.J. Abrams get involved, they want to put their own stamp on it when it's totally unnecessary. They fucked it up. God damn you. You fucked it up.
Well, that's what happens when the CIA dominates every freaking media thing. And
that's true, too.
There's a whole famous book written about J.J. Abrams working to produce Alias with the CIA. So.
Yeah, Alias, yeah.
Can you tell me the name of it offhand?
Yeah, it's called CIA in Hollywood by Tricia Jenkins.
Yeah, Joe.
I didn't know that either. But you would think that like all these like 24s and shit like that, they have intelligence connections.
Oh, totally. They're all 100%. In fact, that's mainstream news too. I mean, this is becoming more and more known, and it's just kind of like people are like, oh, you know, I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time and been called a retard for a long time.
Yeah.
It's actually true.
You see who NBC News just hired? It was, XCA Chief John Brennan signs as MSNBC contributor.
There you go. and Wolf Blitzer, you know, Christine Amanpour, they start appearing in movies now, so it's like the whole thing is blending into one big.
Mike Morrell, he's always showing up in this stuff, and
right.
Anderson Cooper, for Pete's sakes, he was giving the news to kids. He was a CIA intern. Boy, that just ended there, I'm sure.
Oh my God!
All happening, people.
It's all happening. Come on,
it's all happening. Drunk.
That's true.
You want a hot-powered uppercut right upside your head? You're about to get it. Boner. Balls. Ah!
Obviously.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Jay.
Have a good night.
We will talk to you soon. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. Shabla Goo. And we'll talk to you later.
Shabla Goo.
Oh, fuck.
No.
I can't believe you've done this.
Stop the hammering. Black shampoo.
You're an asshole.
Shampoo.
Oh, you guys like to tell jokes, giggle, and kid around, huh?
Proud shitholer.
Oh, my God!